Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, do me one quick favor and leave us that 5-star rating and review. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Now, today we got a special one. We're talking to my man, Moses Hall. Moses Hall specializes in commercial investment property acquisitions and commercial real estate dispositions. In January 2019, he launched Mo Hall Commercial and Urban Development, where his focus is redevelopment through commercial real estate and investment properties. Now, through collaborative efforts, his ultimate goal is to revitalize communities and build wealth through real estate on the south side of Chicago. Moses' mission has been highlighted in publications as he received the prestigious honor of being named Realtor Magazine 30 Under 30 Class of 2019. Let's welcome to the show, Moses Hall.
Thank you, John, for having me on this show. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, man. Moses, our paths have crossed a couple of times here in Chicago in particular, and I've always been really excited for what you've been doing and what you've been building. For those folks who are not familiar with you, why don't you take 1 or 2 minutes and give a little bit more context on your background?
Okay, so I'm actually originally from New York City, the Big Apple. I have a background in the arts. So I grew up and went to all different performing arts high schools, one being the Fame School, which is called LaGuardia High School. So if you have ever seen the movie Fame, that's the high school I went to. I studied jazz performance, playing piano. And once I graduated high school, I did not want to be that starving artist. And I said, how can I monetize my talents, my gifts, and still be in the music entertainment industry? So I looked up different colleges. I decided to study music business at Columbia College, Chicago. And that's how I ended up in Chicago. And I played different live shows, worked with so many artists, co-produced different records. And from that journey, I transitioned from being a musician to I opened up an event space in the South Loop. So right after I graduated Columbia, my thought process was no one was hiring. How do I create a revenue stream for myself as a recent college grad? And the thought process went, as an artist, we all need some type of space, right? As you have to, whether you paint, whether you perform, whatever it is, you need some type of space. So I went and got an artist loft space where I lived on one side and I rented out the other side for events, workshops, and I was leasing. And the light bulb went off in my head and I started doing the math on what I was paying the landlord, what the landlord was getting for the other units. I read an old article for what he bought it for because it was like highlighted. And I was like, dang, this guy is making a killing. I need to learn about commercial property investment. And so I started my journey as a broker in 2014.
Man, that's amazing. It's funny, man. It's this whole time I've known you, I didn't even know that was your background. It was more in the arts and music and getting into it. So that's amazing. Just to recap, born and raised out in New York, came to Chicago to go to Columbia College, trying to figure out how do you avoid being a starving artist. And that's so key, man. I mean, I know a lot of folks who are in the creative space. As you know, my background's in advertising where we work with a lot of creatives, writers, art directors, musicians, all of that, actors, actresses, directors. And you come across a lot of creatives and it's tough starting out because you don't have, the money that's coming in. You're living project to project and it's tough, it's really tough to do that. So obviously you recognize that early on and say, listen, let me just get a baseline of revenue coming in, renting out that space to other folks. But then recognizing, hey, you know what? Why just rent this space if I can own a space? I mean, there's obviously way more potential here in transition and starting initially on the brokerage side. So what was that process like, getting your license to be a broker and then transitioning from spending almost all of your time being kind of the artist or being around artists to actually being more in the commercial real estate space?
So I actually, I had a space in the South Loop, and I used to always pass this real estate office coming down Michigan Avenue. And just one day, I was like, you know what? Let me call up and schedule to get my license. And it was history from there. So I took the course. I think I took it over a 2-month, 3-month period. What really helped me, those that are looking to get their broker license here in Illinois, I'm not getting paid to say this, but examsmart.com literally is a lifesaver. It's $50, but it will definitely help you prepare for the Illinois broker exam. And I swear by that. I mean, it definitely preps you for that. So after I took the exam, I was kind of stuck trying to figure out where should I go. I didn't want to necessarily go to a big brokerage house where I get kind of lost in the sauce. But then I still needed the relationships and the knowledge, at a smaller broker. So I ended up through my network getting introduced to my first managing broker. Even though they were more of a residential firm, I was kind of the commercial point guy. And I kind of grew my business, started working with investors. And my background in the arts, because I had a platform, I had a social media following, and that kind of helped me build my business very quickly versus starting from scratch. Even though it's a new industry I'm in, but people respected me as a business person and knew my professionalism. So I started at a boutique residential firm, but I was the commercial guy. And then once I grew my business to a certain capacity where the residential firm couldn't really support me and like with the tools and resources that I would need to conduct day-to-day business, I transferred to a more full-service commercial brokerage. It was still boutique, but they were able to kind of give me a little bit more tools and resources to conduct day-to-day operations. And I stayed there for a few years. And then from there, I just saw the opportunity to go ahead and launch my own firm. So I'm going on year 2 with Mohawk Commercial and Urban Development. As you kind of read in my bio, we've won several accolades, such as Realtor Magazine 30 Under 30, Connect Media, Next Generation Award, several other commercial awards that we've been noticed in our short span of being established.
Yeah. And, I think the thing too that's really powerful is that you kind of leveraged, your social media following, the influence, the personal brand that you had developed. And even though it was in something completely different, right? I mean, you're talking about the arts to
Right.
commercial real estate. I mean, I don't know if you have two things that are as different, right? I mean, there's certainly some overlap when you talk about the venues and the event spaces, but I mean, the arts is all about freedom of expression. And, I mean, commercial real estate is basically capitalism and, some of these other things that are not tied to the art. So to be able to leverage and transition that audience in a way that allows you to grow, I mean, I think that's a sign that anybody who is building a personal brand or a following, especially in business, you can transition that if you're focusing on that. For folks who are looking to get into commercial real estate, many people ask the question, hey, I want to get into multifamily, or I want to get into real estate. Should I get my license? That's a question I get all the time. I'm sure you get that question very often. As you went through that process, one, I want to ask you the same question, but then 2, starting out, what do you think helped you be successful outside of just having kind of the brand and the following initially? What made you successful that first year after you got your license, as opposed to those people who get their license but don't really take advantage of it?
I think it's super important to be knowledgeable and a resource to your client. So for me, that first year, I was studying. I was learning how to analyze a deal. I was learning terms. I was, out there in the field. I was spending time. And my first managing broker, he'll tell you all the time, he'll see me downtown at the Harold Washington Library, just picking up real estate investment books, just reading. So that first year was me educating myself on how to conduct a deal, understanding deals, because you got to understand real estate is people's largest asset that they're buying in a lifetime. So you can't play around with someone spending $2 million on a property and you don't know what you're doing. So I really used that time to educate myself during that time period and being a resource and building relationships that I can, in commercial real estate, one of the biggest things that investors hate to deal with is finding a property management company. So that will make or break your investment, especially if you're out of state. So for me, it was my goal and my mission to find reputable companies that I can put my name on the line and that they deliver, especially working on the south side of Chicago, where a lot of buildings are underperforming, not managed properly, where I have a team where we can come in and we can take an underperforming building, fill it up with quality tenants and having performing way above than what the investor initially had. So things like that, educating yourself and building relationships with people in the industry that can help further your business so that you're now a huge asset to your clients.
Man, that's powerful insights right there. Educating yourself first and foremost. And I love the fact that you talked about for a year. This wasn't like you read a couple of articles and you got your license and you were good and off and running. You talked about continually educating yourself, reading all the books you could find, listening and connecting with all the people you could, making sure you thoroughly understood the challenges that commercial real estate investors faced. And you called out property management, which, again, anyone listening to this show, anyone in commercial real estate understands that property management is such a key component. You talk about making or breaking a deal. And this is even at the professional level. I mean, there are people who you have to understand that the property management is a key component. So for you to take that and then lock in on going through different vendors, different resources, and figuring out who you could align yourself with to make the proper referrals, that allowed you to stand out and to grow because people are looking at you as the resource. And as a broker, you have so much power in your network to be able to connect that investor with the right, not just property managers, but attorneys and lenders and lending brokers and so many other pieces. You can be really the conduit to everything else. So, taking that seriously and making sure that you built a powerful team that could allow you to be of most value to your investors is a phenomenal way for you to grow. And that's great advice for anyone else who's looking to either get into the brokerage side of the business, or if you're already on that side and have your license, maybe you can take some of these insights and build and grow more influence and grow obviously your revenue yourself by implementing some of the things that Moses is talking about here. I want to fast forward. You talked about launching kind of your firm, in your arm of the business. How does that differ with you kind of now running your own company as opposed to, just working as a broker underneath a different brokerage?
The cost. The cost is, but when you believe in yourself and you bet on yourself, I know I can win. And like you said, within the first year of getting all these awards and accolades in an industry that, is typically tough for an underdog to come in and try to start to make headways. But yeah, the cost to get started on the commercial side of stuff is a little bit more pricier than doing residential. You have to have certain tools and resources such as CoStar, LoopNet, CRMs, all those things that I'm incurring the cost. I have Brevitox, I have all the platforms out there that all the larger firms use. Even though I'm a boutique firm, I have them. And so that was definitely a transition of trying to, maintain these costs, build the business. But, that first year was definitely a little bit challenging, just trying to get the name out there and the brand. And some people looked at me crazy, and I had offers from some of the larger companies that were trying to recruit me. And when I turned them down to start my own, everyone was just kind of like, what? You turned down this offer? But it was just one of those things that if I believed in myself and I felt like this was the moment, the opportunity for me to take the risk. For me right now, I don't have any kids, I'm not married. I said, God forbid, if anything goes wrong, just file bankruptcy and keep it moving. It's not the end of the world. I mean, most of your billionaires, millionaires have filed bankruptcy and they're able to recover. So for me, it was like, why not take that risk right now? So that was kind of my mentality. But the biggest hurdle for me was just the entry barrier, the cost. Luckily, I had savings, I had other opportunities, and I just leveraged that and got into launching my own firm.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you talk about what's the worst that could happen, right? The worst that could happen is you fail, you have to file bankruptcy and start over. But when you look at even that scenario, man, the lessons you would learn and to be able to take that into a different venture in the future, it's still worth the risk, right? For you, because you can recover and you're in a space where you can grow and you can excel at such a rapid rate that it's worth making that investment and taking calculated risk because you've already built up clientele, relationships, the
Correct.
vendors, all the other things that we've talked about. So, I want to make sure people don't misconstrue what you're saying. It's not like you're being
Absolutely.
careless and reckless, like,
No,
oh, let's just shoot
no,
for it. If it don't work, it don't work. That's
no.
not it. I mean, you clearly have taken the time to build the relationships,
Correct.
to build your own personal success tied to someone else and say, listen, you know what? I feel like I can replicate this now on my own and
Right.
invest in the tools, the systems, the resources. And I love the fact that you talked about that first and foremost is you didn't go out here trying to, penny pinch and just say, hey, look, we don't do this, on a shoestring budget. You say, listen, I want to have the same tools and resources that
Correct.
larger commercial brokerage firms have. That way we can play the same game. So it's not like we're at a disadvantage. It
Correct.
really now comes down to relationships. And
Correct.
that's something that being in the South Side, you can navigate that. You can be local, you can be seen, and you know how to make that work. So again, just powerful insights for anybody, even if you're not in real estate or want to be a broker. I mean, my takeaway is, always bet on yourself, but make sure you are investing the proper resources so that you can compete at the level of your peers as opposed to simply just being a cheaper alternative. You want to make sure you're offering the same quality service that those peers are offering. And if you have the experience, if you've been able to do it by yourself, it's worth taking a shot to see if you can go out on your own. Worst case scenario, you can always kind of come back, bring on partners, or pivot back to being underneath somebody else's umbrella. So great stuff there, Moses.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of what the outlook looks like there. So as you kind of go forward, you're still early into that venture, right? But as you're growing and expanding, where do you see some of the opportunities for you to grow, and where's your firm kind of headed as you move forward?
So right now, what we're doing, as I kind of mentioned, because I built that foundation of resources, a lot of our clients are out of state, out of the country, and they have the capital, but what they don't have is me. So, I've kind of proved myself to these people. And now what we're doing is we're buying into the deals that we represent. So that's kind of the strategy. We have some partnerships on, like retail, industrial stuff that we're doing, partnering with some developers. And then we also have some residential developers that are doing fix and flips, and we're kind of running those projects as well. So that's kind of, because I realized as a broker, as you kind of mentioned, I was doing everything anyway. So after I've kind of proved myself and let them know that I'm not just this, regular broker that you can just hire off the internet, but that I show my professionalism, they feel comfortable that I ace deals. I took listings that no one else could sell, and I got highest price and got them done in a week. And they saw how strategic I moved, how, I planned everything out, and I won their business. And so I can go back and approach them like, hey, well, we did this. Now, hey, I bought you another deal. Hey, let's partner. I'll put my commission earnings in the deal, and we can work out a situation. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're just kind of partnering with some of our investors on deals. They're putting up the capital, and we're kind of running the project. And so that's kind of what we're moving towards right now.
And I think that's very valuable, especially for out of town investors, because, when we deal with brokers, the one scary part is, are you being told the truth? Does the broker really believe in this deal, or are they just trying to get their commission? Because brokers they'll certainly tell you, what they need to do. At the end of the day, they get paid when a property sells, not when they, give 100% full disclosure. So if you're going to buy something, especially if it's sight unseen, you talked about international investors. So if they're not flying over to check out the property and they're just going off pictures and videos, then they really need somebody who's boots on the ground that they can trust. So by you investing alongside them in that deal and kind of taking an ownership and even just the execution, that can provide a lot of comfort for people. And that's certainly a service that goes above and beyond what most other brokers are offering. So there's certainly a great way for you to build that rapport, that trust, and for folks to want to work with you. I got to say, Moses, I always tell you this when I see you in person, because you like the flyest young dude I haven't seen in my life, right? And I want to talk about the importance of that, though, because, that's really the first thing for me. I think I'm trying to remember when we saw each other the first time. It might have been at the event that Tony Hardy had.
Yeah.
And I think we had seen each other on like social media or something like that.
Right.
But I think the first time I saw you in person was at Tony's event. And I mean, just fly, and you fly right now. You know what I mean? You always got the blazer on, and you get, I take my hat off and I see what you're doing over there. But I would say on a more practical level, because we also want to talk about like brand building and personal branding and just like, how do we establish ourselves, especially if you feel like, you're a younger person in the game, so you need to kind of stand out to be taken credible and be serious. How important is kind of your dress and your attire and your style? How important is that for you when you represent yourself out there to other investors and in the commercial space? How important do you see that as a part of your personal branding?
It's a huge part of my personal brand. I mean, a lot of people know me for fashion. And then once I tell them my background that I'm from the arts, because they always assume that I'm some like R&B singer or something anyway. So, but it's always, when you go out to networking events, sometimes it can be intimidating to walk into a room of people you don't know. But it's a lot easier when someone just comes up to you, compliments you on the way that you're dressing, and it's an easy way to start a conversation. Hey, man, I love that blazer. Oh, man, what's your name? Oh, yeah, da-da-da. And now you've just made a relationship with an investor. You didn't have to go through the same corny, it's an easy way. Now you're already likable. And like you said, it provides a certain comfortability when they see the way that you dress, that you take pride. Like I said, real estate is people's biggest purchases of a lifetime. You have to kind of look now, like you said, you don't have to fake it till you make it, but you definitely do have to kind of look a part that you can handle that their investment. There's a certain look that people look for in terms of comfortability, in terms of handling their investment. So my personal brand, my dress, it all plays a part. Actually, I just kind of grew up that way. My dad, he's from the islands. He's also lived in London. And so his first job in the States was a tailor. So, at home, he used to always tailor my pants. And so this is, you look at baby pictures, I always was dressed in suits and bow ties and stuff like that. And I guess it just carried with me throughout adulthood. But no, it definitely plays a huge part in that personal brand because people automatically recognize me for my style, my fashion. It's a conversation starter. And then, like you said, when I post pictures, people engage. Because a lot of times people don't really care about the deals that you close and all that. They want to see the selfie. They want to see the vacation, well-dressed, that type of stuff that engages people. And then it leads them to other posts that you may post, such as your deals. And, it'll get them engaged from there.
Yeah, and I think too, like, you obviously have the personality and the charisma, the intrigue, the backstory with the arts and everything else to pull it off. And I think a lot of people say that's great for Moses, but I can't pull that off. I can't just walk in a room with a lavender, blazer on or a salmon tie or something like that, salmon bow tie. I can't pull that off. But I think the point is that, there are things we could do, especially if you're trying to network. If you're on social media or you're looking to network in person, there are things that we can do with our dress, our clothes, hats, accessories that are, little interesting pieces. There's a book I was reading and it talked about this, but what it does is it gives someone an opening.
Correct.
And that's what you just hit on, right? People, you go to a networking event to network, right? But if everybody's dressed in the same, stodgy, navy suit, and white, shirt, collared shirt.
Yeah.
There's nothing really to walk up and talk about. So you end up with hey, so what do you do? And it's just you're reaching, you're hoping somebody throws you a lifeboat and makes it an interesting conversation. It's not, it's tough. And that's why people don't like networking because it's
Absolutely.
like, oh man, I feel like I don't know what to say to people. But if you see a guy rocking something that is just interesting, it's just fly. Just walking over like, yo, man, I like your shoes.
Yeah.
And okay, hey, thanks, man. Yeah, blah blah blah. I got these from such and such. Now you're into a conversation, and now you can naturally transition in. And I think for you, and this is how you and I really met. Because I think I literally said something to you about something you were wearing.
Absolutely.
But what I love that you did though was you flipped it into a conversation that was, where we could talk and we could connect as opposed to simply just taking it as a compliment. And I think that the point I want listeners to take away is I'm not asking you to dress like Moses because I can't pull that off. But make it easy for people to connect and engage with you. Give them something, give them something of interest. Give them a pen, a story, a picture. Give them something where they can now ask you a question and you can spark kind of a conversation, because I think that makes networking a little bit easier when you do that. And going back to the personal branding, I know anytime I see you, it's going to be a blazer, something fly. I would be disappointed if you came on here with just, a t-shirt and you ain't, didn't clean up the hair or anything like that. I'm like, yo, you okay? What's going on, brother? So I think it's really important to make sure that you're consistent, and people look forward to seeing that as well. So the personal brand, I think, is really strong, and it allows you to stand out. I mean, to see where we're all got thousands of connections and you're scrolling through your feeds, it's good to see something that is put together and allows you to kind of stand out and talk about it. Moses, you got something new that you're working on that is really, really intriguing, right? So we've talked a lot about the commercial real estate and kind of joking a little bit about the style and whatnot. But as we do talk about the arts and talk about music, you've taken that passion for music and kind of rolled it into kind of a business venture. So please tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So growing up, I've always been very business oriented, entrepreneur mindset from a kid. Even at our local church, every kid had a savings account. But I was the kid that would take my $5, and stick it in there immediately and save my money and know how to budget, all that type of stuff. So I've always been very business minded. And I always was trying to figure out, how can I combine my love for business, but also my talent in the arts? And I've always been struggling, just trying to figure out, okay, I love real estate. I love what I'm doing, but I need to bring it back to the music. How can I sustain myself, have a business that makes sense from the music side of things? And I went back to Michael Jackson. And to me, I know people were saying Michael Jackson was broke and all that. There is no way possible that Michael Jackson was broke. Now, he might have been liquid, but in his assets, that man was never broke. And why was he never broke? Because he purchased the Beatles music catalog. And that set him straight for life. And even in death, his heirs are still living off of that Beatles catalog. And that just rung a bell to me and said, you know what? I have a background in music publishing and licensing. I worked at 2 different companies in that field. And I saw what the publishing checks were looking like just for indie artists. If you got your music license in a commercial or a TV ad or a film, and you're an indie artist and you get a check for $75,000 plus residuals on the back end, that's a pretty big sizable check for an independent artist. And so I thought about it and I said, you know what, here's the time. I got my background in real estate. I built my reserves. Let's start this new business venture. So I've started Mohawk Music Publishing, where we acquire the royalty rights to some of your favorite celebrity catalogs. Our current artist catalog includes R&B singer Chris Brown. He's platinum, won many awards. We've acquired rights to collect royalties for some of his songs. So anytime that a song is played on radio, anytime it's streamed, anytime that it's placed in a TV campaign or played on TV, we will generate a royalty check. And so that's kind of what my new venture is. And kind of, as I explained to you before we had started recording, it's literally like analyzing real estate. But the reason I love it is because you don't have to deal with tenants, you have to deal with vacancies, you have to deal with property taxes. Your catalog is still going to work for you. It's passive investing.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I saw that and said, man, I got to reach out to Mo, and it's time to get this brother on the show, because this is something that is, I won't say revolutionary, because it's obviously been around for a long, long time. Right. And we've watched, people, if you've ever watched, Unsung or, any show that talks about your favorite musicians from the last 50, 60 years, publishing comes up, is about at some point, The
Correct.
artist isn't getting their publishing. I mean, Diddy, they talk about Diddy all the time and
Yeah.
sticking people up on the publishing and all of that kind of stuff, right? I was actually just watching the No Limit Chronicles, don't judge me.
Oh, yeah.
But a big chunk, I mean, when you talk about it, a huge component of it was Master P kept all of his publishing.
Correct.
And instead he did a distribution deal. So that gave him so much power and influence over Priority Records that they basically said he was the most powerful person in entertainment. They had never seen a black person do a deal like that in music history.
Right.
And the reason this is relevant is I think we've all heard about publishing for years.
Right.
I have not once even thought about it being an investment opportunity. Just has never crossed my mind. So I'm curious to how you actually went from that conversation, thinking about Michael Jackson owning the Beatles catalog, to, hey, maybe I can go out there and buy publishing. Is this something that is accessible for the everyday investor?
It depends. It depends. I do, like I said, I do have relationships in the industry and kind of working like that. But also with songs and music that you hear on the radio, there's a lot of different components that breaks down in who has what right and stuff like that. So for your typical pop artist, right, they don't necessarily write their own songs. They just sing it or they rap it, right? There are people behind the scenes. So for one song, it might be 5 songwriters that have rights to the publishing, right? I can offer to buy out one of the songwriters for their share of the publishing, right? And so you got to think about it. Songwriters, they're not always multimillionaires. They're not always people that you see on TV and famous. They may have signed bad publishing deals. So what I can do is offer them essentially an advance, like maybe a 5-6 year advance on what they would get on the royalties, and I buy them out of it, and I take over collecting. So prime example, right? Let's just say I'm on a small scale. Let's just say I buy somebody's publishing rights, a songwriter's publishing rights for a particular song for $60,000, right? Let's say that catalog produces $10,000 in royalties per year, right? In 6 years, I would have made back my initial investment, right? And then typically you can own that right to collect royalties for the life of the author plus 70 years. So after 6 years, it is nothing but pure profit. And you got to remember, you're not necessarily, I mean, you can buy an entire catalog, but it just depends on kind of what you want to do. But there's still people that have other rights, and they're going to be working to get it advertised, to get it plugged in movies. So all you're literally doing is collecting money every quarter. And so how does it benefit a songwriter? Let's just say that, like you said, I signed a bad publishing deal, and I live in LA, living off of $10,000 a year you can't do that. So, and let's say I have my own personal project that I want to do and put out there, right? As an artist, someone gives you 60 grand. That's a lot of money to your struggling songwriter that maybe didn't sign the best publishing deal, that maybe didn't have this, maybe squandered away their money. 60 grand to your small time writer that may have had a hit, but like you said, we hear about like groups like TLC that didn't had a number 1 hit but was broke. So you can, as an investor, offer to sign the right, to buy the right to collect their royalties. And from an investment standpoint, I make my money back. So in 6 years, and the way I look at it is, what rental property can I buy for 60 grand that's going to net me 10 grand a year? I don't have to worry about vacancies. I don't have to worry about property taxes. I don't have to worry about property management. And all I got to do is sit back and collect the check.
And what else? I mean, listen, none. I mean, that expense ratio is amazing, right? And as you said, kind of 10K a year on a 60,000 investment, it got me thinking about GRM, right? Gross rent multiplier, where you would say in this scenario, if you buy a property for $60,000 and it was netting $10,000 in income annually, you would say, okay, there's my GRM, right? It's a 6, in 6 years, this property would be completely paid for, but that's just off of the gross rents. That doesn't factor in all the expenses and the taxes and all the other property management aspects that come into it. So, as you look at this, it's super intriguing, right? I think it's something that is a great platform. And I know you have connections in the industry. Is this something where, could I call like Chili and T-Boz myself and just say, hey, I want to buy your royalties, or what's the process for that?
It really, like I said, it really depends on the level. Yeah, obviously you just can't call out the yo. Now, unless, like I mentioned earlier, that Rodney Jerkins, super producer, he's produced for Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, all the greats. He just sold all his catalog rights. I believe the deal was like for $100 million, and to a firm in London. But yeah, there's different approaches that you can have. Or like you said, you can definitely contact me. And like I said, I'm definitely expanding to, open it up to other investors where they can come in and invest. And like you said, the solid returns are there. But it's almost like you said, analyzing real estate. The way that you kind of analyze music publishing is you kind of look at it from how old the song is, right? Because typically a new song within maybe the first year or two is when it's going to generate the most royalties. If you can get a song that's 10 years old, that's still producing a substantial amount per year, that's the type of songs that you kind of want to go after. Because like I said, you're doing future predictions on how the catalog is performing. And if it has a history that's consistently performing $9,000, $10,000 a year, you have that to kind of go off of versus, it's only, a year old and it did, 30,000 the first year, but then it dropped down to 2,000, after the record stopped playing. So you want to look for artists that are constantly putting out projects that are in headlines, because they're going to be constantly streamed. People are always going to be going to YouTube. People are always going to, stuff like that. So that's kind of how I look at it. But yeah, in terms of opportunities, like I said, if you're interested, I can definitely kind of guide people in that process.
And Mo, as you talk to other folks, you're fairly young. We talked about the 30 under 30, and as you kind of transition into, continue to build out both of your businesses here, what advice would you give to kind of a young entrepreneur looking to kind of follow your footsteps, build out their business, and follow their passions?
I would say literally do not give up. I know that sounds super cliche, but there have been times that I really wanted to throw in the towel, and right before I threw in the towel, that next great opportunity presented itself. And, looking back, like I said, it's definitely been tough because I've been a full-time entrepreneur my entire life. I've never went on a job interview, a formal job interview per se. I've never clocked in a clock. So I've been a full entrepreneur my entire life, and this is all I know. So, just really don't give up. Like, if I can do it, you literally can. There's going to be sacrifices that you have to make, unfortunately, but in the end, it'll definitely all pay off.
All right, let's move on to our bullseye round. You ready?
Ready.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
So the apparent failure, I thought, was when I didn't get hired at my internship. I was in my last year of college, and I was trying to get hired, and I'm thinking I'm doing good. I'm gonna get hired. Lo and behold, they didn't have enough room, to bring me on, the salary cap and all that type of stuff, which led me to start my event space, which was named Mole Hall Loft. That's where I got the Mole Hall name from, and transitioned to other businesses. But after I didn't get hired, right, the business had a huge layoff within 6 months. And then within like a year and a half, it completely closed down. So my failure, what I thought was a failure, was not getting hired, because every college grad, you want to secure employment. You want to have something. You know, I hit my mom like, okay, what do I do next? She's like, well, you got to figure it out. Like, I don't know, you got to come back home, you know, and I had to figure it out, and I figured it out. So that failure of quote unquote not getting hired led me to all my business ventures that, you know, I don't think I would have started if I didn't have that not getting hired, which the company ended up closing shop within like 2 years. So it was almost like a blessing in disguise.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
So I definitely use CoStar, CompStack, you know, those type of resources, LoopNet, those definitely help me conduct my analytical data research, you know, on buildings and trying to pull comps and all that good stuff.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
So I would definitely recommend Millionaire Success Habits by Dean Graziosi. That's definitely been very helpful in terms of trying to grow as an individual, grow as a business person. You know, it taught me to focus on my strengths. It taught me to find my passion. It taught me positivity. And that's what I would recommend to others.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Meditation, prayer. When I get up, that's the first thing I'm doing, just reflecting. I'm a big believer in power of your words that you put out in the atmosphere.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Don't count your money till the deal closes. You know how many times I done got excited, man, I got this, and I'm counting, getting ready to spend, and then all hell breaks loose. So one thing I would tell my younger self when I first got into business, do not count your money until that check is in your hand and you deposit it in your account.
All right. So you are in Chicago. I know you're all over the city, but especially on the South Side. But give me the best place to grab a bite in the city.
Bavette's. Best steakhouse in the city. You got to try it out. Bavette's.
Where's that?
It's what is the address? I can't think of it, but it's downtown. But it's a phenomenal steak. You got to make reservations like 2 months in advance to get in there. That's how phenomenal it is. Bavette's.
That's probably why I don't know where it is. Do not plan out that far in advance. There you go. Mo, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. I love hearing your story and how you kind of took your artistic background, transitioned that into kind of an event space, and then from there getting into commercial real estate, now building out your development company, as well as the publishing side, which again was something I hadn't even thought about. So hopefully that's been insightful for people just to continue to think about ways to be creative, to explore different alternative investment opportunities. For those folks who are interested in learning more about you, potentially working with you on the commercial side, or potentially even on the publishing side, what is the best way to reach out?
You can find me on all social media platforms at Moses Hall. My company name is Mo Hall Commercial Urban Development, but you can just go to your search engine and type Moses Hall. You can find me on all social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And like I said, my business page is Mo Hall Commercial Urban Development.
Mo, pleasure talking to you today. Thank you, man. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you.